The market's first liquid-cooled projector has arrived, namely the BlitzWolf V9. In this video, I will tell you about the advantages and disadvantages of this device, and of course, how much it costs. So stay with me. Well, with LCD projectors, one of the biggest problems is usually that the higher the brightness, the louder the cooling becomes, since the main source of heat in these devices is the LED itself, which is the light source. So these need to be cooled somehow, and if we cool them, then the cooling system makes noise, and in some cases the machine can get quite loud, which is not very good. So there is a limit to how far manufacturers can go with brightness. And after that, I really don't know what can be done, because the machines will need such powerful cooling, so strong that it will start to interfere with their use. Well, the V9 and the technology inside it, specifically liquid cooling, might offer a solution to this problem. I got a bit ahead of myself with the technology. That's not where I want to start. Obviously, as usual, the first thing will be the exterior. After covering the exterior, I'll talk about what the projector can do. And then at the very end, I'll share my experience and how well I think this device turned out. So let's start with the exterior. Well, as you can see, we're talking about a rather compact device. The whole thing weighs about 3 kilos as it is. It has a gray-black front panel. Unfortunately, we don't get a lens cover. So that's about it. I think you can see for yourselves that this isn't a complicated device. It looks relatively good, but in my opinion, the plastics weren't very good. These plastics aren't of very high quality. Sometimes there's a bit of a creaky feeling as well. So the assembly isn't exactly perfect either. It's clear that we're not talking about an expensive device, but the number of ports actually contradicts this, since there are quite a lot of connectors on the back panel. There are 2 HDMI ports, 2 USB ports, an Ethernet port, a headphone jack, an AV port, and an infrared sensor. So we get a relatively large number of ports considering this is a budget projector. Unfortunately, the HDMI is only version 1.4, so it's not the most modern. But for this device, I think it's still adequate. If you look at the exterior, you can see that there are vents all around through which air can exit the projector. This is very important, of course, since, as I mentioned, the cooling is liquid-based and it's actually a pretty good liquid cooling system inside. The manufacturer, by the way, has put 2 5-watt speakers into this machine. But that's not the most interesting part. Rather, it's this small silver thing here at the bottom on the back panel, which is actually a subwoofer. Yes, this is a subwoofer, and it works in such a way that there is a chamber inside where the speaker moves the air, and this moving air also moves this diaphragm. Obviously, the role of a subwoofer is to make the sound more dynamic, to add some bass, to give a bit of dynamism during action scenes, games, and so on. So this is a very interesting solution. There are similar ones from competing manufacturers, and some competitors even have larger ones. It works very well there. So I was really curious to see how well it would work with this machine. You won't find any control buttons on the projector. There is only a single power button, which is surrounded by a light strip that glows, either blue or red, depending on whether the machine is turned on or off. Another thing worth showing is the bottom of the projector there, because on the bottom there is only one that is a single threaded hole here in the center. This thread is a standard one, which allows you to mount the projector onto a tripod. I'm not sure I would mount it on a regular tripod. At most, I would dare to put it on a tabletop tripod, because this single threaded hole has to support the weight of the projector, and if it's on a tall tripod, then it's going to wobble quite a bit. I'd be afraid that it might fall off. So I definitely wouldn't put it on a tall tripod, but I would put it on a small tabletop one where you can adjust the tilt angle. This is especially true because the projector doesn't have any kind of support on the bottom. There's no fold-out leg or anything like that. So if we want to tilt it, we either have to use a tripod or put some books under the front so we can project upwards a bit. So that's pretty much it for the exterior. I think you can see it too through the camera. It really does look good, and if you don't want to touch it, you could almost call this exterior premium. If you touch it, you can somewhat feel the cheapness gap, but as you'll see, it's really not an expensive device, so we can forgive it for that. And now let's move on to the specifications. Well, as I mentioned, it has liquid cooling. It's an LED projector, an LCD projector, so this is a cheap Chinese projector. These usually use this kind of technology. What's interesting about it is that its luminous flux is 1000 ANSI lumens, which already puts it in the upper category of LCD projectors. Right now, around 1100 to 1200 ANSI lumens is the maximum they can achieve with an LED light source. It's also important that thanks to the high luminous flux, we can project a large screen size. The manufacturer claims that we can have an image as large as 300 inches. More precisely, the screen diagonal can be 300 inches. This means that we can project an image with a diagonal of about 7.5 meters. I find that a bit excessive. In an average apartment, 100 or 120 inches is more than enough. You don't need anything bigger than that. With its 1000 ANSI lumens, this projector can easily handle that size perfectly. As I mentioned before, it has built-in speakers, specifically 2 active 5-watt speakers and a passive speaker, here at the back. We get a relatively simple little remote control included with it. Well, this remote really doesn't do much at all, and as you can clearly see, there aren't actually any dedicated buttons for streaming services like Netflix and the others. Unfortunately, this also means that, regrettably, it's simply not really prepared to support these services at this time, unfortunately. More precisely, obviously, since this is an Android projector, you can watch Netflix on it. But you only get Widevine L3 certification, not L1. And this means that those streams, like Netflix, which require Widevine L1 certification, cannot be watched in HD or Full HD, only in SD resolution. Regardless of this, the resolution is of course natively Full HD, so 1080p, and 4K content can also be downscaled, as long as the hardware is sufficient for it, because relatively simple and inexpensive hardware has been built into it. The memory is just 1 gigabyte and the storage is also very small. So this is really a projector and hardware designed and prepared specifically for 1080p content. Another thing worth mentioning is the operating system. As I mentioned, it runs Android, but not Android TV. Instead, it has a rather cobbled together Android 9 system. It works, there's really no problem with it. It's just a bit on the slow side, so sometimes it does tend to lag a little. If you press a button, want to use a function, or start a program, you have to wait a few seconds. So, to put it mildly, it's not exactly a speed demon, but unfortunately that's all the hardware can handle. Otherwise, this system basically does everything a projector needs to do. So, in that respect, there's no problem with it at all. A minor issue is that the Hungarian translation in the settings and some other places is, let's say, a bit odd. So it was probably not translated by a real person but by some translation machine, and no one checked whether it was actually correct. So just like with cheap projectors, I'd recommend that if you know English, stick to the English interface, because that's clear. Whereas with the Hungarian interface, I often have no idea what's behind a given menu item. Okay, now for a quick summary. So, the main things to know about the BlitzWolf BW-V9 are the following. Liquid cooling on nylon 1000 ANSI lumens, subwoofer, a projection size of up to 300 inches, and Android 9. Well, that's about it. And now comes the part about what it was like to use this projector and what my experiences with it have been. Obviously, I measured everything, and you'll also get test footage, so let's go through these one by one. I'll start with the cooling since it's liquid cooled. So, one of the most important things about this projector is that the manufacturer claims it has very quiet cooling thanks to the liquid cooling system. Of course, in addition to liquid cooling, fan-based cooling is also necessary. The manufacturer says that the noise produced by the projector during operation is 30 decibels. I didn't measure 30, but rather 40. Unfortunately, this means that since decibel values don't increase linearly but exponentially, the difference between 30 and 40 isn't 30 or conversely 25%, but much greater than that. And that's a problem. Honestly, I can say that among projectors with similar luminous flux, I wouldn't call this one extremely quiet at all. I would call it quiet, but by no means as quiet as the manufacturer tries to claim, because of the liquid cooling. I actually have no problem with the image quality, although I think the claimed 1000 ANSI lumens is a bit exaggerated. And as I wrote in the article, the 1000 ANSI lumens can be observed with the vivid color settings. Maybe the brightness is a bit stronger there. But in this mode, the colors get a bit off. Kind of tutti-frutti, a bit oversaturated, too colorful, too intense. And in any case, we don't get anything lifelike. If you want to fix the colors, then you should lower the brightness a bit, but not drastically. And considering how good the price of this machine is, I have to say that for that price, in my opinion, it's more like 800 to 850 ANSI lumens. At least that's what I can estimate by eye, which for this price makes this projector a really, really great buy. Then there's also the matter of the sound, more specifically the speakers and the subwoofer. And if there's something I have to praise about this machine, I think it would definitely be the sound. Because this little subwoofer really adds a lot to the sound experience. It truly gives it more dynamism, a bit of power. There's a bit of rumble and growl when you're watching an action movie. And so overall, it was definitely a great decision to include this subwoofer.
In the world of magic,
everything that disappears
everything that
has
disappears
appeared. It's really great that we've appeared.
It is very
Come on,
good to
we've
be
shown
back.
up in the situation. Now, right now,
You're gonna be our
I'm going
helper.
to spoil the punchline. So, the price of this projector is 65,000 forints, and for 65,000 forints, you get a projector with a brightness of 1,000 ANSI lumens, capable of projecting an image up to 7.5 meters wide, and it even has good sound. Yes, it only has Android 9. Yes, Widevine L1 is not supported. Yes, using streaming services is a bit tricky, but for playing movies from external storage or watching content on YouTube, I think it's perfectly fine. Actually, even better than that. You'll find the link to purchase it below the video on YouTube. The coupon code is there as well, which lets you get it for 65,000 forints. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, then choose from the other 2 projector reviews appearing next to me and come back tomorrow, because I'll be back with another projector review. In fact, this week I'll be posting a projector review every single day, at least on weekdays. So come back, subscribe to the channel, and don't miss a single episode. Bye.